bit of video trivia here for you today. I was going to delete this video because when I looked back on it, I thought it was a bit too serious of a subject, and the world is very serious at the moment. But one of you viewers, Ruben, asked me to post a video on Pearl Harbor, and so here it is. That's how you get me to react to stuff. Yeah, put it in the comments. Enjoy. So today I thought I would look at a video that is a more comprehensive history of the Pearl Harbor attack than I have ever been educated about. Actually, I think your second year history teacher would beg to differ. Of course, he did just read from notes out of a book and lectured at you and made you write down everything he said and shouted at anyone who got behind. So really, is it a wonder you didn't absorb any of the history lessons that he gave you? Honestly, my only knowledge of Pearl Harbor, and I will allow myself to say I'm ignorant about the attack, is the stuff that I saw in the movie Pearl Harbor.
Do not tell me it can't be done.
And now I am aware that is not a popular film, but I really enjoyed it and call that a controversial opinion.
God, it hurts. It hurts up fierce.
Before I get into today's video, do be sure to like, subscribe, comment, share, all those things. Otherwise an Irish next door neighbour will take up drumming as a hobby. They're not even going to be very good. Thanks for the suggestion in comments of my Irish curse. Okay, let's do this.
On the morning of December 7th, 1941, at 7:48 a.m.
I love this channel, by the way. It's so good.
Shocked the United States and the world by attacking the U.S. naval base at Pearl Harbor in Hawaii. The next day, the U.S. entered into the Second World War, declaring war with Japan, and on December 11th, Franklin D. Roosevelt declared war with Germany and Italy. Was this attack by the Japanese one of the worst military decisions in history, or was it a strategic mission to gain critical advantage? Today, we take a look at the events leading up to and surrounding this tragic event.
Interesting question.
Diplomatic tensions between Japan and the United States had been escalating since Japan's invasion of Manchuria in 1931. Japan expanded their operations into China, leading to the Second Sino-Japanese War in 1937. The Japanese attack on the USS Panay, the Allison Incident, and the rape of Nanking all swung Western public opinion against the Japanese. Come 1940, Japan moved into French Indochina, attempting to cut supply lines assisting the Chinese. The US, along with France and the UK, were supporting the Chinese against the Japanese invaders. The USA stopped shipments of airplanes, machine tools, and aviation fuel to Japan and ordered for more military presence in the Philippines.
Meanwhile, in Ireland,
there's no doubt that Era means to fight if attacked. But good as her fighting forces are, they can be no match for the organized slaughter machines of the Nazis.
In the hopes of discouraging the Japanese from continuing their activities in the Far East, Japanese High Command was convinced that their attack on UK territories in Southeast Asia, such as Singapore, would lead to the US's involvement in the war, and they felt a preventative strike against the Americans would be the best military strategy. In 1941, the US and Japan entered negotiations in an attempt to improve diplomatic relations. On November 20th, Japan proposed to withdraw from Indochina and China.
See, I thought that they were peacefully negotiating,
provided the US ceased their aid to China and lifted all economic sanctions against Japan. 6 days later, the US counter-offered with the Hull Note that required Japan evacuate China without any conditions. Before Japan had received the Hull Note, their task force had already left Japanese seas, heading for Pearl Harbor. The Japanese attack is thought to have been a preventative action to stop the US Pacific Fleet from interfering with their planned military operations in Southeast Asia. Japanese attacks were also focused on the US-held Philippines, Guam, and Wake Islands, and the British territories of Malaya, Singapore, and Hong Kong. Pearl Harbor was attacked by somewhere between 350 to 450 Japanese aircraft in 2 waves from 6 aircraft carriers. All of the American battleships were damaged, along with 3 cruisers, 3 destroyers, and an anti-aircraft training ship.
And it's my understanding they weren't in like fighting mode, right?
188 aircraft were destroyed, 2,403 Americans were killed in the attack, and 1,178 were injured. The Japanese lost 29 aircraft, 5 midget submarines, and 64 servicemen. A third wave was planned but not executed. The Japanese objectives were fourfold. Firstly, they intended to destroy the American fleet units, thus preventing the Pacific Fleet from interfering with their activities in Southeast Asia. Secondly, they hoped to buy time to increase their naval strength and strengthen their military position. Thirdly, they hoped to deliver a blow to the US's capability to mobilize in the Pacific. And finally, the Japanese believed the attack would weaken morale in America to an extent the government would drop its demands and seek a peaceful compromise with Japan. Shortly after the attack, and probably before it, Japanese Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto regretted the offensive strike. The 1970 Hollywood film Tora 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 has Yamamoto saying, "I fear all we have done is awoken a sleeping giant and filled it with terrible resolve." Although Yamamoto never uttered these words, his diary is littered with pages of pre- and post-
Oh, he never said it? Oh, that's interesting.
Yamamoto went to Harvard University from 1919 to 1921 and knew quite well the threat the U.S. posed.
I had
Pearl
no
Harbor
idea.
led to U.S. involvement in the Second World War and ultimately to the first and only use of atomic weapons in current history. On August 6, 1945, the U.S. dropped Little Boy on Hiroshima and 3 days later dropped Fat Boy on Nagasaki. So why did Japan pick a fight with an enemy boasting greater economic, industrial, and potentially military power? The plan, had they pulled it off, would only have bought time. The US's budget for the year 1940 alone was greater than Japan's 10-year military shipbuilding plans. The repercussions of the attack on Pearl Harbor could not have been totally unexpected. Admiral Yamamoto compared fighting the United States to fighting the whole world. He told his political principals, "If you insist that we really do it, you may trust us for the perfect execution of a breathtaking show of naval victories for the first half year or full year. But if the war should be prolonged into a second or third year, I am not confident at all." Yamamoto was right. Japan had to win quickly or not win at all. By 1943, the U.S. had a bright new shiny high-tech fleet authorized by the Two-Ocean Navy Act of 1940.
And the
this
Americans
fleet was
were
steaming
mad.
into the combat zone with a thirst for revenge and a reason to do so. Zenji Abe, 89, was a former dive bomber pilot in the attack on Pearl Harbor. During the war, we Japanese did not know much about Americans, and they also did not know about us. We conducted our mission as soldiers, and there was no hatred there, though the government tried to teach us to have such feeling.
Wow. Oh, that's so interesting, isn't it? The humanity of it. It's just governments.
It's just that our paths happened to cross in Pearl Harbor on that day, Abe said in a 2006 interview with the Japan Times. Suggesting that the attack was a futile diplomatic failure, Abe calls into account the responsibility of wartime Prime Minister General Hideki Tojo. The wartime leaders at the time told people to commit if we were captured. They should have committed seppuku when the war ended, as they had responsibility for causing the suffering of so many people. Their attitudes were immoral, he concluded. I believe Japan and the world would have changed for the better if the Pearl Harbor attack did not happen, and the relationship between Japan and its neighboring countries would have been different if the wartime leaders had acted morally. Events of the magnitude of Pearl Harbor
always the stupid leaders
often come with conspiracy theories attached. The Pearl Harbor advanced knowledge conspiracy theory is the argument that the
and then the innocent fighters are caught in the crossfire.
The U.S. government knew that Japan's attack on Pearl Harbor was imminent, but promptly did nothing about it. The debate questions how and why the U.S. was caught off guard and to what extent they knew about Japan's military ambitions. In September 1945, John T. Flynn published a 46-page document entitled The Truth About Pearl Harbor. A number of writers, including journalist Robert Stinnett, argued several parties in the U.S. and British governments had advanced knowledge of the attack and either let it happen or even encouraged the event.
Oh my
behind this theory is that the attack would result in America entering the European theater of World War II via a Japanese backdoor. This theory is, however, considered a fringe theory and is rejected by the majority of historians specializing in the period.
Whoa, okay. I know a lot of stuff there. But what I've concluded from watching that video, and actually I'm probably going to deep dive a little bit more now because I'm interested and I'm surprised at the amount of things I didn't know. I think it's interesting that wrongdoing was acknowledged. I admire the people who go to war for their country, but the people pulling the puppet strings, I don't necessarily admire them. It's kind of sad. Kind of sad. That's it for today. See you on the other side. Bye. So today I thought we would look at more of a comprehensive history. I'm going to do that again. It can all be resolved with a game of rock, paper, scissors.